All right, some key messages on Helene as this storm moves ashore. Some new things to look at, some new data coming in. We're going to look at the wind swath path. These numbers are extremely high. Some of these numbers may be on the high end, but we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about where it looks like they're going to be going and some of the similarities that we're seeing. And we're also going to continue to see more rain. That is going to lead to catastrophic flooding in some of these areas. So the key message first, let's start off with where the storm is coming ashore here this evening, here in the Big Bend area of Florida. We're going to see storm surge up to 20 feet. This is a dangerous, life-threatening storm, not just for the coast, but once this moves inland too, you're going to have problems across South Georgia. It will still be a hurricane as it moves north of Tallahassee into southern Florida. So Macon here, we're going to get the worst of it as we head into the overnight hours with these hurricane force winds pushing in along the eye wall, spreading inland through the overnight hours. So if you are in these areas, you should be prepared to take shelter in an interior room, almost like you would a tornado. In fact, speaking of tornadoes, there will likely be quite a slew of tornadoes here on the front right side quadrant of this hurricane as it moves ashore. Also, another thing that you've got to keep in mind too, there's going to be a lot of power outages, power lines down. Be careful around those things, and these damaging wind gusts will continue to push even further north as we head into the overnight and early morning on Friday. So for the Piedmont here, from the upstate of South Carolina into the mountains of North Carolina, not only are we dealing with really the wind, but some torrential rain too. And this could really cause some huge problems. Another thing to keep an eye on too, the long duration of power outages that could happen with these damaging wind gusts that penetrate inland. So we could be dealing with power outages from Georgias into the Carolinas tonight, particularly over the higher terrain. This could be a long duration power outage. Again, remember, if you have to use a generator, even the National Hurricane Center saying, keep this in mind, keep that thing at least 20 feet away from your doors, windows, garages to avoid that deadly carbon monoxide. And then another thing too, here in the mountains, when you're talking about not only heavy winds, but also rain that could add up on top of what is already falling. This is additional rainfall, maybe another foot of rain. You could have dangerous, life-threatening flash flooding, also numerous significant landslides. The National Hurricane Center actually said significant landslides possible in these steeper terrain areas, especially into the southern Appalachians through Friday. Widespread river flooding likely continuing for days after this thing is over. Here's the culprit. You've got this upper low, and now you have your hurricane becoming a tropical storm. We've talked about this for several days, wrapping around and losing strength as it moves inland. The GFS from this afternoon, very similar. That track is pretty much done. It's a done deal at this point. Now we're just watching these wind gusts that will just be absolutely devastating. Here's a look at Florida. It has been windy all across Florida today. Winds could gust still over hurricane force at times, even here on the eastern side. In fact, as this thing moves ashore, it's going to explode in its size, so that wind field will expand even further. And, looking east of Macon here, we could see wind gusts close to 100, especially in that eye wall, on the northeast side of that eye wall as it moves ashore. This thing is going to be moving so fast that it's not going to have a chance to fall apart as we head through the day on Friday too. So now we're looking at all the way up here into the Appalachians. Some of these gusts here could go over 80 at times, I think, especially in the high terrain. Easily 50 to 60 in the valleys here from Southwest Virginia, Western North Carolina, the upstate of South Carolina, and then down into Tennessee. Places like Charlotte could see gusts 60 to 65. Really, once you get east of Greensboro, east of Roanoke, these winds do back off, but it's still going to be breezy here. But the damaging winds could continue all the way up into Kentucky and parts of West Virginia and Tennessee too. So power outage is also possible here in these areas with this storm. Here's a closer look at kind of timing out the wind gusts, so to speak. So by midnight, this thing's coming ashore here in the Big Bend area of Florida. And now we've got the strongest winds here again on the east side of that eye wall. Again, those winds won't be consistent. You're going to get that moving through pretty quickly, but when it does, you're going to feel it. So gusts could still push 100 here as we get into the early morning hours on the east side of this. And you hear that on my phone? That is National Weather Service issuing alerts on my personal phone. So multiple warnings will likely go out, and you can't plan for that to happen here on a video that I'm making. Have a way to get warnings wherever you are, because not only are we going to see devastating flash flooding, but anywhere within this eye wall area and to the east of this storm, we could end up having significant tornadoes too. So now by the time we get into early Friday morning, things are calming down across Georgia and South Carolina. Still winds are going to be gusty at times. Let's go a little bit further to the north and east. I'm going to change the view just a little bit here. Let's look into the southern Appalachians. This may be a little bit of a better view here. Coming out of Georgia, this is the wind gust. This is what we're looking at here. There's your eye, your center of circulation. Winds here coming out of the south and east right up against the mountains, just squeezing that moisture out. But the winds will increase here in the upstate of South Carolina, really from Columbia northwest all the way up into the high country, where we could see gusts. I think on the ridges especially, I don't see how we couldn't see 80 to 90 mile per hour gusts, maybe better, with this hurricane eye wall moving through what's left of it, that remnant. And then as we head into the early morning hours, now we're talking about northwest North Carolina, parts of northeast Tennessee, and southwest Virginia, places like Mount Rogers, down toward Abingdon, all the way down to the tip of Virginia toward Lee County. And now you're looking into southwest Virginia from Wytheville west. That looks to be where we're going to see the strongest winds here into southern West Virginia from Bluefield to Beckley over to Pikeville, Kentucky. Now we've got the stronger winds moving into places like Louisville, Lexington. It's going to be moving your way as we move through the morning, and maybe even as far north as Huntington as we head into the afternoon. Across North Carolina, things starting to calm down a little bit. Also here across Tennessee, these winds will slowly back off, but I still think we're going to see power outages in these areas. And then look how far north this wind field, really, if you will, kind of moves as we head into the evening hours. Certainly not, a major hurricane, but winds could gust 40, 50, maybe even 60 miles per hour as this wind field. I'm going to back this out even further. Look how big it gets, right? So it's not as strong. I'm going to back it up to where we are now. Look how tightly everything is clustered, and look what happens once this thing merges with that upper low. That wind field, again, it's not as strong, but it's huge. So a very windy time here all the way up toward Chicago, back toward Missouri, your center of circulation here, combining with that upper low. So now you're seeing your circulation kind of come in like this, and we lose the extratropical characteristics. So a very wild forecast. And again, this is where the catastrophic flooding, I think, is going to be. Also into Georgia. Watch out here into parts of Alabama too. It's not just going to be in the mountains, even across areas a little bit further to the south too. As far as the deep south goes, is if you look here into parts of Mississippi and Alabama, the heaviest rain looks to be on the east side of Alabama, really from Birmingham northeast. And then right here along the eastern border between Georgia, central and east Alabama, with the heaviest rain again across Georgia. And then up here into Tennessee, we could get some big flooding here too. The main problem that I see right now is that it has been raining in many of these areas for the last 24 hours. We are really saturated out there. We've had flash flood warnings going out all day. You just heard one come across my phone. And now you're going to add more to this. This is not a good situation. If you're in a low-lying area and you experience flooding, seek high ground. Back when I was in television, I did a story one time. I did a follow-up story on some folks who had lost their lives in flooding. And some pictures were taken unfortunately, before they lost their lives. And you see that and go, why couldn't they get out? Why didn't they get out? And I don't think anyone thinks it can happen to them. And unfortunately, sometimes it's one of the most underestimated things, in my opinion, is flooding. And inland flooding kills more people when you look at hurricanes than any other thing, more than the wind, believe it or not. So it's a huge risk, and I just want you to be safe out there. Tornadoes, big risk still going through the overnight across the southeast, really from North Carolina. This threat picks up in the morning, but through the night, we're talking about Florida to Georgia to South Carolina. And then as we head into tomorrow, so now we're moving into Friday, I'm telling you, this is going up here from Virginia, West Virginia, down into North Carolina, South Carolina, especially here along the coast where you get those feeder bands pulling into our low as it moves north like this. That wind shear will be coming in like this. So you'll get those quick spin ups of tornadoes. Again, another reason to have your phone wherever you go to be weather alert and get those weather alerts when they come over. Okay? All your official information should come from the National Weather Service. Make sure you have a way to get those warnings. Be safe, guys. I'm praying for everyone tonight, and I'll catch you next time.